Dear friends, this is episode number 33 of the Limitation Act. Last time we have covered up to subsection 3 of section 15. And while dealing with the section 15.2, I mentioned about notice. And also in private disputes between private persons also I mentioned about requirement of notice in certain cases where statutes provide so. And on reading it again for the purpose of uploading, I had a doubt whether the viewers have misunderstood me. If there is a suit between private persons and it is not a notice which is contemplated in subsection 2 of section 15, that period will not be excluded. Suppose I file a money suit against you. To avoid cost, I am issuing a notice to you before filing a suit. That notice period will not be excluded. Or under the special statute where notice is required, that will not be excluded. But if it is an authority in accordance with the requirements of any law for the time being in force, and what is a explanation? The time required for obtaining the consent or sanction of the government or any other authority. That is it. It is not against private individuals, as between private individuals. I am sorry if there is a doubt on that. It is due to my lack of clarity. Yes. Now, I said that subsection 4 of section 15 I will deal with separately. Let us see subsection 4. In computing the period of limitation for a suit for possession by a purchaser at a sale in execution of a decree, the time during which a proceeding to set aside the sale has been prosecuted shall be excluded. What is the meaning of this? Article 134 of the Limitation Act provides that for delivery of possession of any by a purchaser of immovable property at a sale in execution of a, whether it is decree holder or a stranger, 1 year when the sale becomes absolute. 1 year from when the sale becomes absolute. So, whether there is a conflict or whether a suit can be filed, suppose a person does not, who has to get delivery of the property does not apply at all under Article 134 within 1 year, whether he can file a suit based on title and recover it, that is a question. That is a very, very confusing question. And what is the meaning of section 47 after the amendment of CPC in 1976? All these questions arise, and there are different opinions expressed by even by Supreme Court, and it is an area where an authoritative pronouncement by the Supreme Court is required. I will cite all these decisions, and I will express my view, personal view, which I was all throughout mentioning about in various fora, and the reasons therefore I will present before you, so that it is for you to assess the situation, find out an answer, and interpret the Supreme Court decisions accordingly. Very difficult. So I will, after completing 15, I will deal with section 15.4 along with article 134 and section 47 separately to the extent possible. 5. In computing the period of limitation for any suit, the time during which the defendant has been absent from India and from the territories outside India under the administration of the central government shall be excluded. These are section 15 provisions, subsections of section 15. Suit or application for execution of the decree that is subsection 1, the institution or execution of which, institution of the suit or institution of execution petition or execution of the decree, has been stayed by injunction or order. Various shades of meanings have been given. Whether a partial stay is enough, or whether an order of injunction or stay is required, or any other interim order of any other nature is sufficient. These are all areas where there are ever so many decisions. It is not my venture to cite all those areas, decisions in those areas, and confuse. And it will look very clumsy. Even then, I will cite large number of decisions for your consideration. If you read it, you will get a clear idea as to what is the scope of section 15. Except 15.4, there the confusion still remains. And as I said, I will give my clear opinion on 15.4. I have got a different opinion, I will say that. Yes, now we will go to some of the decisions. 1992 Kerala High Court cases 279. It is reported in Kerala Law Journal also, 1992 2 KLJ 923. T.S. Lakshmikutti Amma versus Umman Nainan. I have cited for some other purpose. Section 14, same decision I have cited. Here section 15 also considered in that judgment. And it was held, paragraph 8. It was a case under the Debt Relief Act. Whether that period which was spent by the parties before the debt recovery debt relief tribunal, whether it could be excluded for the purpose of execution was the question. I will read para 8. From the above, it is evident that the period from 17/1/72, when OP was filed before the tribunal, to 13/4/84, when that application OP was disposed of. That means a period of more than 12 years it was pending before the tribunal. It is evident that the period so and so, a period of 12 years will be excluded from being counted for the purpose of limitation. The decree is dated 31/7/1972. The present execution petition was filed on 24/2/1986. That means 72, 82, more than 12 years. Under Article 136 of the Limitation Act, the period for filing an execution petition is 12 years. Article 136, for execution of any decree other than a decree granting a mandatory injunction or order of any civil court, 12 years. When the decree becomes enforceable. So during for a period of more than 12 years, the matter was pending before the debt relief tribunal. And let us see what the court says. From the above, it is evident that this period, the decree is dated so and so, and the execution petition was filed on so and so, will be well within time if this period of 12 years and a few months is excluded. There can be no doubt on that score. It is agreed that the judgmentator filed OP number so and so for the relief under the Debt Relief Act. He prayed for a relief under section 3 read with section 4 for installment payment. Under the said act, that is Debt Relief Act, the payment is irrecoverable for certain period. In view of the decision so and so, the running of time under the Limitation Act is suspended while the payment is irrecoverable. that period also should be excluded because it is a statutory repose. If that is excluded, there will be further advantage to the decree holder to exclude that time also. So, a relief granted to the debtors from realizing the decree debt, that should not work out an injustice on the decree holder. Decree holder has got, in this case, 12 years time to file the execution petition. But more than that, the matter was pending before the debt recovery tribunal, debt relief tribunal. Therefore, during that period, the decree holder could not execute it. So, if that period is not excluded, what is the justice that will be given to the decree holder? So that is excluded. This is what is said by Justice K.S. Paripurnan in that decision. Then next is 2009 8 SCC 359. It is reported in KHC also 2009 KHC 920. Amarendra Kumar Paul versus Maya Paul and others. Criminal Procedure Code 125, an order. There was a stay by the revisional court. An order under section 125 CRPC was filed. See, the respondent in that application filed a revision and there was stay. In fact, the order of stay had been granted by the revisional court as also by the High Court in the aforementioned proceedings. The limitation for filing the application for execution would be computed upon excluding the period during which the order of stay was operating. That is in paragraph 15. Next is ILR 2009 3 Kerala 625. Same as 2009 3 Kerala High Court cases 164. Food Corporation of India and others, Division Bench, Food Corporation of India and others versus C. Muhammad Kunyi and others. I had cited this for the purpose of section 14. That was a suit filed by the Food Corporation of India. And the Food Corporation of India was claiming demurrages charges. And there was an attempt on the part of the Food Corporation of India to collect it from the current bills payable to the respondent, that is to Muhammad Kunyi. At that time, an original petition was filed before the High Court. High Court granted a stay of recovering this amount from the current bills, whether that period can be excluded. There the question was put, was there any bar for the Food Corporation of India to file a suit? No. Food Corporation of India could file a suit. The stay granted by the High Court in a writ petition was only to injuncting the Food Corporation of India from realizing this amount from the current bills. Suit was not filed by that time, no decree was granted. The Food Corporation tried to snatch that money from the current bills. At that time an OP was filed before the High Court, writ proceeding. The High Court said, no, you cannot. Whether that period can be excluded by the Food Corporation of India for the purpose of computing the period of limitation for filing a suit? No. In this case, it was held that both the courts held, the trial court as well as the High Court held that the suit is barred by limitation. Food Corporation of India was not entitled to exclude because there was no stay or injunction order against the institution of the suit by the Food Corporation. You may see para 7, I will read only a small portion. The stay was against the action on the part of the corporation to deduct the demurrage charges for the period so and so from out of the current bills payable to the respondent. Period from 82 to 84. Only that period. The stay granted against the collection of demurrage charges from the current bills payable to the respondent in respect of subsequent contracts cannot be termed as a stay of injunction against the institution of any suit. There was no bar for the corporation to institute a suit against the respondent for realization of demurrage charges. To attract section 15(1) and to claim exclusion of any period thereunder, there should be an injunction or order staying the institution of the suit. The object of subsection 1 is to safeguard the interest of the person who was precluded from exercising his civil right to institute a suit by an order of injunction passed by the court. Then the decision of the Supreme Court in AER 1959 Supreme Court 198 was referred to and followed. It must be shown that the institution of the suit in question had been stayed by an injunction or order. In the present case, the right, if any, of the corporation to adjust or deduct the demurrage charges from the current bills alone was affected by the stay order in the writ petition. The right to institute a suit claiming demurrage charges was not affected by the stay order. So that period cannot be excluded is the view taken by the division bench that was following a decision of the Supreme Court on some other point, interpretation. AER, next is AER 2005 Karnataka 248. It is reported in KHC also 2005 Kerala High Court cases 5608. Though it is the name is Kerala High Court cases, it gives the Supreme Court and decisions and some of the decisions of various high courts. Name of the case Thottappa Rachappa Ingalahalli. Thottappa T-O-T-A-P-A-P-A Rachappa Ingalahalli versus Gangadharayya Neelakandayya. There is something else and others. Decree was for a specific performance of agreement for sale. 15(1) of the Act does not speak of absolute or partial stay or injunction or order. It could be said that if there is an order of stay or injunction, it would be correct to say that execution of the entire decree has been stayed. No matter whether such an order of stay or injunction is restricted to part of it. So when there is a stay or injunction even against part of the decree, that period of stay or injunction order shall be excluded while computing the period of limitation. Hence the benefit of the injunction order in so and so goes to the decree holder extending that decree time for filing the execution petition. So this is the Karnataka view, whether partial or absolute, then it will apply. Then AER 2002 Kerala 146, same as 2002 Kerala High Court cases 224. Xavier versus Lucy V. Papali, P-A-P-A-L-Y, Lucy V. Papali. There was a decree against which there was an appeal. There was no stay or injunction in appeal. The decree could be executed, no harm, because there was no stay. whether the time during the time consumed by the appeal could be excluded for the purpose of computing the period of limitation for execution. Was the question. There is a principle. We have seen section 15, then when there is a stay or injunction prohibiting the decree holder from executing or injuncting him or otherwise affecting his civil right. Here there is only an appeal. A decree was passed by the trial court, the defendant filed an appeal. Appeal was pending. He never applied for stay. There was no bar in executing. Nothing wrong. But the decree holder waited. It took several years to dispose of the appeal. He filed the execution petition within 12 years from the date of the appellate decree. Whether the execution petition would be barred. Since there is no stay or injunction order, on a plain reading section 15(1) will not apply. But there is another principle of merger. It merges in the appellate decree. While dealing with the order 41 of CPC, in that episode I have said about merger and I have given a catena of decisions on that aspect. But I will explain this. A decree is passed, it is executable. That decree is appealed against. Appellate court either confirms or varies or set aside the decree. If the decree is set aside, there is no harm, nothing to be executed. But the decree is varied by the appellate court or even confirmed by the appellate court, then it is the appellate decree that holds the field. It is the appellate decree that is executable. Though the execution petition is to be filed before the court which passed the decree, it is the appellate decree that is executable. Suppose the decree of the trial court is for realization of 10 lakhs, appellate court modified to 9.5 lakhs, it is the appellate decree that is to be executed. Likewise, if a decree is passed for in respect of an item of property, the appellate court confirms it, still it is the appellate decree, time begins to run from that date. So that is called the principle of merger. That also we must know. It is not only 15(1) or matter is taken to the Supreme Court in civil appeal, disposed of on merits, either confirmed, set aside, varied or reversed or whatever it is. It is that decree that is capable of being executed. Suppose an SLP is filed, special leave petition. It is dismissed at the admission stage. Then there is no merger. Is the consistent view taken by the Supreme Court. So this principle of merger also you must take note of while considering all these things. I remember a case, I do not remember the citation. The name of the case is Neela Chinna. Neela Chinna versus so and so. There what happened to us? A decree was passed, money decree, and there was an appeal. No stay was there. So the decree holder could have executed the decree. He did not. He waited till the disposal of the appeal. Of course, if the decree was either confirmed or modified, he would have got again 12 years time. But cleverly what the appellant did was, by that time 12 years was over. There was no stay or injunction. There was only pendency of the appeal. And when the appeal came up for hearing, the counsel absented himself, which resulted in the dismissal of the appeal for default. You are aware that a decree dismissing a suit for default, an order dismissing a suit for default is not a decree. Section 2.2 of the Code of Civil Procedure says that decree, definition of decree, formal expression of an adjudication so and so, it shall be deemed to include the rejection of a plaint and determination of a question under 144, but shall not include a decree, an order dismissing for default, etc., etc. So it is not a decree. So merger, no merger. So that danger is there. See, the advocate for the appellant gone to the court and argued something, either succeeded in part or dismissed, the decree holder would have got 12 years time from that time. But he was very clever. By that time 12 years was over. Why should he argue and get an adverse order? He got his appeal dismissed. Thereby there is no merger and the period of 12 years was over, and I had no other occasion but to uphold the plea of the judgment debtor. Sometimes it happens. So that the decree holder must be careful. When there is no stay, when there is stay, you need not worry. So long as the stay order is there, that can be excluded. And if the judgment of the trial court is either confirmed, varied or set aside, that is, the appeal is disposed of on the merits also, you need not worry. But suppose in the meanwhile the time elapses and the appeal is dismissed for default, there is no decree, there is no merger, then by the time your execution petition will be barred. That danger is there. So whenever an appeal is pending and whenever there is no stay of execution, the advocate appearing for the decree holder must be very careful. What he has to do is to just file an execution petition, be kept pending, or let the execution court say that appeal is pending even though there is no stay, long adjournment is given. Let it be so. You need not worry. But this danger may be there sometimes. Therefore, lawyers appearing for the decree holders in cases where there is an appeal pending and there is no stay must be doubly careful that they must file the execution petition within the period prescribed, either under Article 135 or 136 or 137, whatever it is, when an appeal is pending and when there is no stay. When there is stay, there is no problem. Yes. That is Xavier versus Lucy. Now we will see in the next episode. Thank you.